having. Okay, all right, so do I have, that was a good suggestion, Kyle. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, Mayor.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And it passes 7-0. Well, I didn't, if you're gonna vacate, no, just kidding. All right, so at this point, we're gonna go into executive session. City Council will convene into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney to discuss the following. Discuss demand letter from Meridiana. And we will convene pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney to discuss participation in state of Texas settlement with litigants on opioid litigation. We will be back shortly. Thank you.
I'll speak later on, but I just want to make sure I'm ready. This is it, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
That is
it's
correct.
message.
Okay, you're good. You're already up there.
Oh, okay. So when I come in, I'll just press this.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and click it. I don't know what your first slide is, but if you want to go ahead and.
I don't want, there are a lot of people here, the presenters.
So if you double click that,
I don't want them to.
you don't want to open it just yet, or
Yeah, I don't want to open it
Okay.
yet.
So you should be good though. Whenever it, do you have like maybe
No,
so so that's good. So you're good. So
okay.
but whenever you're ready to present, you just hit your present button. You should be good to
Where
go.
was the present button?
It's I think there's a hotkey for it.
Mhm.
It's been a while since I used PowerPoint. F5. So you can press F5,
Okay.
or you can, or if that doesn't work, you can click this little.
Yeah. The last time my hand was flipping through this. and
Oh
I was,
yeah.
yeah.
We have a tool, like a little clicker that you might could
Yeah,
use.
that was
I don't
fun.
know where it's at right
Okay.
now, but I can make sure that you have that next time.
I appreciate. I'm still with it. I'm sorry to bother you.
No, it's fine.
Just
It
today,
doesn't bother me
but
any.
when I'm about to start,
Mhm.
if you be closer here, so that I just want to make sure that I get on the screen. I could.
Oh yeah.
For my job, we have it. The computer is there. You don't move it.
Mhm. So here's what I
you
recommend.
You just go plug in your computer.
Let me make a recommendation, okay? So we do a new slide here at the top. We would go ahead and start your presentation, right? So all that's up there right now is just a blue screen. Whenever you're ready, you can hit your direction arrow and you can go.
And then this.
So if you want to do it real quick, we can go. Cool. So I usually have like a little clicker thing,
That's
but
fine.
but when we took it to the event, and we don't know where it's at right now. So I can go look for it. Let me go look for it.
It's okay.
So this is a fancy little clicker, right? So you got your arrows left and right. And so that's, if you want to go forward,
Then
to your right,
they'll move back.
otherwise you can go back. Yeah? You want that? So you can actually like, well, we're actually need this because I'm sure everyone gets. Use that and walk around and just for the sake of the recording, make sure that.
I'll show you some of my former presentations.
Consideration and possible action on a request by Aspect Energy LLC to waive the publication and notice requirements for a drilling permit as required in section 35-104 of the City of Manvel Code of Ordinances. We lost our and assistant city manager. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have started without them. Give us a minute. I thought he was right there. You're up. I'm sorry, I started before I looked over in that direction. So I read about Aspect Energy.
Aspect Energy is actually requesting the ability to drill a well in a place that is on the southwest corner of Highway 288 and 6. There was already a well that was drilled there 2 years ago, perhaps, or so. It was a dry well, but we have another company that's going to be working on it. You might know a little bit more about it, and if not, I believe we have people from the company here as well.
So this is one that they actually came 2 years ago. They came first to drill, then they changed that permit because they were going to move over to the other side of the street. This time, now they're ready to move forward with a new permit. They're asking to bypass the hearing notice. So this doesn't approve the permit, it just bypasses the hearing process. On the past one that was approved, they did not have anybody come in to speak against the proposed drilling. They actually had some letters at that time for people in favor that were okay with it. So because there were no comments at the last one, they wanted to speed up that process, and the ordinance does allow for this process to be sped up by presenting a letter to y'all on why they want to speed it up, which is in y'all's packets. And if so, then at the next meeting will be the application for the permit with the actual packet of information for the drilling permit itself.
Okay, Jason?
Tammy, was any of the letters that you got from the Weissman Group or any of the potential leasees for the Manvel Town Center site back then? You said you got some letters in support back then. If you don't know for sure, that's fine.
The only ones that I can remember, what was the name of the lady? The lady that was the landowner that was right around it. I don't remember anything from Manvel Town Center, Weitzman, or anybody like that. If I remember correctly, it was from the sort of surrounding landowners that were in favor of the well, probably because they have mineral rights. That's my guess. But I don't remember anything from Manvel Town Center.
All right, then
Either way.
I've also got a question for Bobby. So do we have a conflict of interest to waive this right since we appear to have an interest in getting this done, as they've said in their letter? They allege in their letter that we have mineral rights to that. The city, Manvel Town Center, they wrote in their letter. So do we, if we in fact do have any benefit from that, or do we have a conflict to waive the public hearing?
No, and the waiver comes from our own ordinance, which lays out the steps you have to take, and you can ask for a waiver in an expedited hearing in our own ordinance. And I think there's a small fee for doing that, and really advance some reasons why. And I guess the reasons why is because it's a remote location that they got no comments, really substantial comments at the public hearing when they got their original permit, which expired, I guess, due to COVID. They kind of shut down during COVID. Now they're back to kind of do the same thing. But I don't see any problem with the city. We're using our regulatory authority here over the oil and gas ordinance rather than any type of property interest that we have. And I don't see that there's really any problem with the city using its regulatory, or else we would never be able to regulate our own land, which you can. We even can regulate, we have to follow our own zoning technically when we build a building here. We have to follow just like anybody else.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't have any questions on this. Appreciate all the documentation that was included in the packet that answered a lot of it. I know there's a gentleman from Aspect LLC here. My thoughts on this are I'm sympathetic to the challenges that they face. As they mentioned in their letter, inflation and the demand for oil is drastically increasing. But personally, I don't think that the city should be in the business of foregoing public transparency for the sake of expediency. I hope that they find success, and I understand what's happened in the past, but they're asking us to exclude the public in this situation from being able to be involved in the process to a certain extent. And personally, while I wish them success, that's not something that I'm okay with. And with that, I will be voting no to this item tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's a 4-3 vote. Thank you very much. Consideration and possible action to approve the first of two readings of ordinance 2021-036, an ordinance of the City of Manvel, Texas, amending the zoning ordinance of the city by changing the zoning classification of 1.612 acres of land located at 3806 FM 1128, Manvel, Texas, from light commercial district to heavy commercial district, providing for the amendment of the city's official zoning map, providing for severability, and providing a penalty in an amount not to exceed $2,000 for each day of violation of any provision hereof. Motion to forward with favorable recommendation by PD&Z failed with a 0-5 vote.
Actually, we have Quasi and Jessica that will address this, ma'am.
All right.
Mayor Davidson and councilors, on behalf of the Planning Division under the Development Services, we were here the few weeks meeting with PD&Z, and I'm here just to present the staff position on this particular case. Just before I go into any very summary details, we did this based on facts, planning principles, and just what the land use actually entails, and so many others. And you notice, you've heard a lot about this site in terms of its location, in terms of what the subject property entails, and what the applicants came in here for. You've heard a lot about where the site is. I'm sure some of you must have seen the site already, and its location and the subject property. What I try as much as possible to look, from the planning division is that this particular site, the applicant representing this 3806 Masters Road for the subject property, it entails two actually subject activity uses on the property. Not only the aircraft manufacturing and what you notice over here on the site, in the subject property, the applicant, as you notice, that is a dance studio. So from the planning point of view, from the land use aspect point of view, we will look at the totality of the whole property. What are the user activities on that planning, on that particular site? And once we look at it, there are certain considerations that we take into fact. One, in terms of circulation. Two, in terms of traffic, parking, noise, abating uses, compactability, especially public health, safety, comprehensive plan, and zoning. So this all encompasses what our findings will be based on and what we did present the last time to PD&Z. And under this note, what we undertook quite a number of trips, myself and others, just to look at what is happening on the site. We've heard about the location, where it is on the ETJs, its location is at the boundary, and other surrounding uses. But we try to understand what are the different scenarios that will really affect such an activity on the site if you look at the planning principles. We came to look at that one, the comprehensive plan. The site is not consistent with the visions and goals of the plan as such, in terms of the vision statement and the goal statement. And the other analysis that we try as much as possible to look at, although there's compatibility of the proposed user setbacks on open spaces or site development as such, when you look at the other property, the dance studio, when there are 44 classes that goes on in there. During peak hours, the whole place, parking and others, and possible noise others, we take all that into consideration, and others. Maneuvering the ingress and egress out of the subject property. We look at that, and then also try as much as possible we look at some on Friday evenings, on some Saturdays, some other weeks, and see what are the activities on that particular user activity that impacts this subject applicant. So our view is not totally on that aerospace activity itself. It's the totality of the subject property that the applicant came for. So we looked at that. We were able to find out that the zoning ordinance as such, if we go ahead and approve this particular aero repair activity on 3806, it throws the dance studio into a sort of a problem. It becomes non-conforming because it all now becomes heavy commercial, and meaning the dance studio will now have to come in for a special use permit and others. So we try to solve a problem to satisfy that particular studio, that particular aero activity, and creating a problem on the other user activity, all on the same property. So from the planning principles and our subject open view, this is how we look at it. Then we try as much as possible to look at what are the other possible that might affect it. We might say that, this particular property, maybe the aircraft is small, but if you do your research very well, some of the very small parts of aircraft activities, no matter what type, there are several small components that have public health issues. I wish we had a public expert here to testify, but most research has proven that in terms of, they talk about welding is minor, but in reality, the metals, the smoke could be, nobody knows whether arsenic or whether it's lead or whether they are fumes, or there's no unknowns on that. So opening up this particular activity to heavy industrial, and we don't know which sort of small parts of aircrafts that are being brought over there. The welding activity and so many other activities that goes over there is the possibility of creating other health nuisances to the area, which we had to point out in others. Question about safety. If we talk about public health, then we talk about safety. Whether the surrounding uses or the dance studio patrons all around there, and so many others. So what we did was we took a look at all these uses, took a look at all those activities going in the subject property area, and from our findings of fact, we realized that the request does not really promote the land use policies of the comprehensive plan. And then the subject property uses and activities, they are not really compatible with all the adjacent uses. And as I've said earlier, safety parking, We took some pictures, a few pictures of some of the parking area, which was not as heavy at that time, but there were times, that we actually, the whole place, in terms of when they have maximum uses, on that particular property. And the dance studio, if it has its maximum capacity, the uses around there impacts this particular subject property as such. So as I stated earlier, that if the heavy commercial zoning is approved, then the dance studio will create a need for a special use permit because it's really a non-conforming use. That is a very strong point in your decisions as such. And staff, because of that, staff did not recommend approval of the proposed zoning, for light commercial to a heavy commercial. We didn't propose it to the Planning Development Zoning Commission. And on November 8th, when they met, they listened to the analysis, they listened to the findings of fact. And the vote was 0 yes to 5 nays. And Vice Chair Rogers was abstained, and I think Chairman Wayne was absent. So this is my short summary in terms of our land use analysis and planning principles as a finding of fact of that particular activity, throwing the other studio on the same property into a special use, creating the problem, becoming non-conformance. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to make sure I get it right. How do I pronounce your name?
It's Kwasi.
It's Kwasi. Okay,
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
it looks. Okay, great. Don't lose your passion. Okay, don't lose your passion for what you. No matter how this goes, don't lose your passion.
Oh no, that's where I've been for all these years.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions. I noticed that I thought that I read, but I didn't see in here that we were concerned about the residential areas nearby. How much of that residential area did weigh in on your decision to
There's
not recommend
one
this?
on the south.
And the reason I ask is that I'm frightened to say that I have the benefit now of the experience on council, having been here for some time. But I'd like to remind council that back in 2017, the areas we're talking about here are Area 19 and Area 22, I believe. I'm sorry, Area 20 of the annexation plan. And a number of members of those communities came here and specifically told us to stay the hell away from them, that they didn't want the city. And I specifically remember, my concern to them was that I would be concerned that somebody would put a nuclear waste dump somewhere near them, and they told them, so long as we aren't in the city, we don't care if there's a nuclear waste dump here. So I'm worried that we're using them in defense of not approving this. And if we do that, then I'm afraid that we've rewarded them our protection without being part of the city, and we're going to move against somebody that is part of the city. And I see you waving your hand, so if
that's one of the reasons with the decision making that's come forward, not knowing some of that background. I guess what I can say to that is those residents might not always be there, and they might not feel that way, because the zoning, once it's rezoned, it's it, right? We get it. So there needs to be some sort of protection, even though they're not within the city limits, because often not then lately, we have some uses that have been grandfathered that are heavy commercial that are right next door to residential. And what we're seeing is constant complaints from a heavy commercial use being so in such close proximity to the residential. So those owners at that time may have said that, but I guess looking long-term at the future, not necessarily the here and now, if those residents don't care, maybe some residents in the future will. We have a lot of people that are moving into acreage, whether it be on our ETJ or whether it's in the city limits. So just looking at it wholly in general, but it's a piece and a part to that decision-making, but not wholly on that decision-making.
I'll grant you that. I still say that we should be protecting our citizens over citizens of the county. if it comes down to a split. The other thing to consider, and Chad kind of took my thunder here, is all around that area is absolutely heavy commercial. There's a grow operation across the street. There's a welding place that he called brown, but is really blackened with soot. There's the crane company down the road. You go a little bit further down the road, and there's more of it. So I have a hard time not, giving these folks a break and putting a company out of business and people on, without jobs at Christmas time. It just doesn't feel right. I think there's a common ground that we could come here, and I understand planning and zoning did what they did and why they did it, but that's why we're here. And I think that there's an awful lot of support there. I also looked very closely at what the uses are, and honestly, I think that if we dug a little more deeply into what the light commercial uses are, I really think there's a classification to be made for what these folks are doing in the light commercial area, because they're not building airplanes out of lead, so I'm not concerned about lead. But I think that there is, a light commercial specific use would be for an automotive repair, and I don't think that anything that they're doing in this business is any more or less dangerous than if an auto shop opened up in that location.
So, if you may, in the case of an auto shop, it would come to you as a SUP, so there could be some conditions that.
No, I understand. What I'm saying is we would permit an automobile as a special use under light commercial in that facility right now. What I'm saying is I really think that we may be looking, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we may be looking too literally on their aircraft repair, because they're not parking aircraft in that building, they're doing parts. So I really don't think that the types of repairs that they're doing and the work they're doing is any more or less dangerous than if an auto repair shop. You see my analogy?
No,
Okay.
I understand. I haven't gone through the iteration of what an auto repair would look like and what conditions would be put on it, because the application is not before, so I can't really give you much insight on what a recommendation would be on the staff level.
And that would be what I would say to the council is I really think what this organization is doing is not. I think there are other ways. I would be in favor of supporting them.
You mentioned about the dance studio and how that would affect them. Can you kind of explain that a little bit more and what the options would be for them, what steps they would have to go through? Or does that really just have to do with if they did any kind of changes to the building?
Yeah, the dance studio falls under NAIC code 611610, which if we look into we go by the zoning category. So, the initial category that they came in for was the NAIC 48810, which puts them under the aircraft maintenance and repair services. That's the NAIC code. If you look at the NAIC code for the dance studio, it's 611610, and that puts them into a special use permit category. If we use the zoning, we're going by the zoning categories, the use table and the NAIC codes that are in them. So upon this, from our point of view, will be based upon that. And it's just to open up the discussion for the councillors and there for you to make up a decision.
Jessica?
I can just clarify that. So rezoning to heavy commercial puts a dance studio into a legal non-conforming use. The only way to make that correct is to be granted a specific use permit for it. We don't, obviously non-conforming uses are there because zoning gets placed on things through time, and then when you have that zoning, you're basically saying when you have a non-conforming use, if you go to heavy commercial, through time, we'd expect that use to just fall out of play, and then something else heavy commercial will come in. That's what we say with anything with nonconformities. Council makes that decision, and we just, through attrition, we want that use to go away. We don't encourage creating nonconforming uses. And I just kind of want to caution, I realize we have a mechanism to go through a specific use permit for it, but then there may be some stipulations on it. We have to look at the, the land uses again around it and how that works. So rezoning creates a problem. And just for clarification, in case we weren't clear about it, they are currently operating in an office use only there. They're just not being able to make any repairs on site, but an office use is allowed in light commercial. So we did sign a certificate of occupancy. We had fire marshal go through there. We had building go through there, and they've been operating for a few weeks now.
So I appreciate the sentiment, Jessica, on the dance studio being there, but given what all the other businesses that are on there, I think it might be an opportunity for us to say maybe in the future, if the dance company, and I'm not saying that I want to do any harm to the dance studio or that I want them to leave in any way, shape, or form, but should they decide to move on to something bigger because that space outdoes them, then I think that we should be considering whether a dance studio in that location is really the best and highest use for that area. And you've also mentioned the comprehensive plan, and I appreciate that, but I think the comprehensive plan is long overdue for us to review, given that A, we were not successful in annexing the areas up there that we intended to in 2017, which may or may not change what our future plans are. B, we originally intended that 1128 and Highway 6 was going to be our downtown area. We threw that away when we bought 160 acres of land. So to quote the 2015 comprehensive plan, and I'm not getting on you, I appreciate you guys did your jobs, but for us up here, for us to hold these folks to the 2015 standard that we've already thrown out the door, I think, again, is unfair. Thank you.
Unless Jessica has.
I just want to say I appreciate that thought process, that the thought has been given towards heavy commercial, and maybe that is the direction that you go in, and it's not just to fix one problem. So I do appreciate that. And on the comp plan, I'm just going to say to be continued. There's things coming in the near future.
Good, and not for nothing, these are the types of things that it's NIMBY, right? Nobody wants it in their backyard, but we have an area of the city that is already surrounded by these things. Why not keep the stuff up there so that they don't want to come somewhere else that we don't want them?
Thank you, Mayor. Quasi, you have probably the most powerful voice that I've heard in a long time. Yeah, you don't need them. You don't need. You remind me of like an old school evangelist with the way that you speak. But thank you for your work on this, Jessica. Thank you as well. I do want to ask some questions about some of the facts, and I hope that we can kind of uncover some more facts. 2 points of clarification, I guess. First is that before the city annexed this property, it was already operating as heavy commercial use. So when we decided to annex it, however many years ago that was, we forced this situation by classifying it as light commercial. So the use that they're intending for is a continuation of ultimately what it's always been this entire time. We maybe previously hoped that it would be light commercial, but obviously there is a desire to continue it as being heavy commercial. The other thing is that the dance studio would only, just to clarify this, Jessica, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, the dance studio would still be able to operate as is. They would not have to come for an SUP unless they want to expand their occupied space on the property. So the talk about an SUP and potentially paying $1,500 would only be in the scenario that they want to expand or maybe do something different inside.
True, very true statements. I always caution people, though, with illegal non-conforming status. Anytime you get something involved with financing, we do a lot of zoning verification letters, and that is one thing that always comes up is the use legally permitted? And if this is rezoned and anything comes up with any sort of verification, whether that's for a bank or not, we can't tell them that use is legally conforming in there. So I'm just throwing that out there as a cautionary thing. It's simple on our side, but I don't know for the property owner if we, kind of create a problem for him.
Of course. And from the standpoint of permitting, health and safety inspections, if we decide to change this land zoning, they would get a certificate of occupancy for the NAICS code, we would re-go through a permit process with them, we'd re-go through the inspection. So from a health, safety, fire, all of that, that would basically need to be redone for this property, correct?
Yes, they would be different, another change of occupancy there where we're actually seeing all the, any operations that they're doing there with, on the repair side.
Okay. Now, is it that staff recommended the property owner go this route of the land zoning change, or was this an idea that the property owner came up with and initiated and came to staff saying, hey guys, I want to change the land zoning? Which scenario, which route did it originate from?
Chad can maybe, I think Chad mentioned a rezoning, because I said y'all have 2 weeks to move.
Okay, so the property owner originated the request to change the zoning, came up with that idea. Okay. At any point in time, either verbally or written, did staff indicate that staff would be in support of their zoning change?
Through my conversations, I had mentioned, and I try to caution a lot these days of trying to give a recommendation of something that we can give or not give until we see all the facts. We go out to the site, we look, we take pictures, we read in the comprehensive plan, we put together all those tools before we make a formal decision on it. So I was hoping, you know, from a personal level, it's something that you can support. But when you sit on this side, and you start looking at all the facts and you start looking at the tools that we have that the city's adopted, we were not able to support it. And honestly, Kwasi put this together. I just gave him a background on facts, and he came up with this recommendation without me telling him anything, and I just agreed with it. So
Great job.
If you look at on the application, I was given the application. I've been here 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And, I look at the application, and I thank you very much for giving that historical, in terms of that it was heavy commercial before, when do the annexation that was changed. We missed that. But once we look at the application and look at the land use codes, the NAIC codes, you could see that from planning principles and others, there's a big conflict. And staff would not recommend such a,
Yeah, well, you definitely been thrown in the deep end in your first 4 weeks. Mayor, I'd echo Councilman Albert's point in regards to, you know, utilizing the comprehensive plan that's basically almost 7 years old now. I think, you know, the to be continued, I'm happy to hear that. I see there being 4 primary routes we could go with this. 1 or 5 technically. One is possibly looking to see if there's a different NAICS code that this business would classify under. One is just to accept the land zoning change, do that outright, deny it outright. The other 2 would be a little bit more unique. One is that we could change the land zoning, and then as Chad mentioned, and this is legally allowable, they could come back in, maybe it's not recommended, but they could come back in 6 months and change it back to light commercial. I was able to confirm today, legally that's allowed, probably not recommended. The other option is that we could amend our zoning code to allow this NAICS code to be a specific use permit within light commercial. So then it stays as light commercial, but you are just allowing a specific use permit. There's a process that you have to go through. You have to open up zoning. It has to go through PD&Z. There have to be public notices. It has to go through city council, so that there's a longevity with that. But I think that we have some tangible options to keep a business that I quite frankly want to see continue operating in our city. All of us, you know, the city government and Chamber of Commerce were given an invitation to go visit with the business, walk through it. I took them up on that. I mean, it's a top-notch business. And so I'm in support of you guys tonight. I hope that you can continue operating. I think that we have a willingness, I hope that we have a willingness on this body to figure out something that works for you guys. And whatever the outcome is, I'm in support of y'all. So that's what I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to add something. I want to ask you, Bobby, to weigh in. When you said that it is legal to change it, for us to change it to heavy and then to go back and change it to light, how does that?
Well, and we had a short conversation earlier with Dan about that I think there's some big legal problems trying to do that. Whenever you're making a rezoning, you're making some sort of findings, you know, that this is compatible with surrounding land uses and, you know, compliance with the comprehensive plan. You know, there's certain factors that courts look at. And then to have it rezoned and then turn around in 2 months and rezone it back saying, oh no, It's really, we want this, the use, this is what the use should be, and this is more compatible with the surrounding land use, and this is what is really in compliance with their comprehensive plan 2 months later. I mean, I don't think
What
any
is that
attorney's
called?
going to represent that, is going to recommend that, because
Yep,
that's
but Your
really just
Honor-
gutting your
Excuse
zoning.
me, I'm still my question. What is that called when
It
people?
says kind of manipulating the zoning process, and especially if you're talking about it in advance, I mean, that really kind of sets us up to be challenged by somebody that, if somebody wanted to challenge that, saying, look, this is not, this rezoning is spot zoning, and
Spot
it's
zoning.
really not, you know, you're not doing it right, and then you change it back, and then somebody say, well, if that first one was a spot zoning, then the second one's spot zoning, and I just think there's some legal problems there that I couldn't recommend doing that particular thing. The other one's about, you know, changing the zoning ordinance to allow it in like commercial with specific use process. That's a legitimate thing that can be done. Or just voting it up or down, like Dan said. I mean, I think those are really what you're looking at. My 2 cents anyway.
Okay, Lorraine?
Sorry, didn't mean to be a smartass. Yeah, I don't understand why we're going around and around. I don't think there's 4 or 5 ways to do this. It is, at this point, a yes or no. Knowing the history of where it is, where it's located, they did admit it was a mistake. They came in, started business. It was found out. They're just trying to make it right. They want to keep doing their business. So I think staff did their job as best. PD&Z voted accordingly with the facts that they have, and and sometimes that's what variances are for, is to come in and decide one way or the other. Where it is, the surrounding areas declined to be part of the city, and I don't want to say that we're trying to throw them under the bus. It's just they're not a part of our city, and we get to plan our city, and it's in the corner out there where they are doing business very comfortably. And if it comes down, legal non-conforming, I get it. We don't want to do that. But 1 or 2 things can happen. One day the dance company can go off and find a bigger place. Or maybe this expands to something bigger and we employ more people inside the city. That's not bad either. But where it is, where it's located, the history, with everything that we know, I believe this is literally a yes or no. I don't know that we need to go through the big hoopla of changing and reinventing the wheel. It would be just a yes or no.
Jason?
I think I'm actually in your corner on this. I don't think we should be pick. I think this is a simple yes or no answer. I don't think we have an appetite to be spot zoning at all. I think that
I just wanted clarification.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when things are brought up and said that they are legal and they're not, it needs to be clarified.
we should keep it.
Particularly at
We
the
should be
table.
We should keep it simple and look to do the right thing.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just want to clarify something. So according to what Bobby said, we could legally do that. It is not recommended. It is not suggested. It is an activity, to confirm, Bobby. It is an activity that could occur, but it could be challenged in court, and it is not recommended. So whether it is legal or not, it is an action that has happened. It could happen, but it is not recommended by our city attorney to happen. Is that correct?
I think that's what I said, Dan. I wouldn't recommend that.
So just want to clarify, so I don't think that there needs to be accusations made up here that a council member is suggesting something, that we do something illegal. I think that there needs to be a clarification about what could occur based off of activities and a desire to want to see this business operate in our city. So I just want to make sure that clarification is on the record. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, thank you for the clarification, but I'm trying to, at all costs, avoid us being in any sort of court proceedings because of a decision that we've made at this table. All right, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the ordinance.
I'll second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 2021-R30, a resolution consenting to the addition of land to Brazoria County Municipal Utility District Number 56.
Mayor and council members, in your package, you see maps of where these 2 small pieces are They're down off of South Masters. Mud 56 has requested the council provide consent for these two tracks to be annexed into the mud. The staff has looked at them. We don't see any concerns or issues associated with those. And if the council wishes to, the staff would recommend that you approve that.
Okay, any discussion? Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. Kyle, what is the purpose and the intent of this annexation? What is Mud 56 looking to do with this property?
One of them is actually an well, it's not a road, but it's a 20-foot strip that goes from South Masters to a detention pond. And then the other one is a piece of property that is adjacent to South Masters as well. I don't know exactly the background of why they were not included originally in Mud 56, but those are the two pieces that MUD has requested in order to be annexed into the MUD.
And my recollection might be wrong. Is this the MUD that it asked us to change the land zoning for a property in order to?
No, that was actually MUD 57.
Okay, I wasn't sure about the
Yeah.
exact number. So
MUD 56 is generally, depending on which area, it's either south or west of Chocolate Bayou, and it's in the sort of the bottom or the western part of the Meridiana development. MUD 57 is kind of the northern or the eastern side from Chocolate Bayou all the way up to Highway 6.
all right, thank you, Mayor.
All right, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, consideration, I'm gonna ask if we can move up 5 before we discuss 4. We have a lady about to have a baby here. And I'm sorry, I should have moved it up sooner and got carried away in that discussion. Consideration and possible action to approve a subdivision variance request for property located at 9820 Uzell Road for relief from Chapter 62-46 and authorize the mayor to execute the development agreement. Can we please not talk during any other discussion? Thank you. All right, Kyle.
Jessica's going to address this.
Jessica.
Good evening again. So this is a variance request for 9820 Uzell Road, and that is for construction of one half of the perimeter road, which our standards in the design criteria manual say the concrete, curb, and gutter. The property is zoned open single-family residential. And last year of April, there was a zoning variance that was granted by the Zoning Board of Adjustment for the property being less than 1 acre in size. So now that the development is occurring, a plat is required, and with the regulations that come with Chapter 62. The road in front of this property is a dirt road. There's some pictures, I believe. There's some pictures that are in the packet there. So staff is recommending approval of this variance request, but with the request being with the approval with 3 conditions, and that's that the owner would construct one half of the perimeter road, which is Uzell, to an asphalt surface per the design criteria manual, and that's to the furthest boundary of the plat. The ordinance, this would expire upon change of use from single-family residential, and then further replatting of the property into more than one lot. The property, as it exists, there are some property owners that are beyond this property on Uzell, and staff's recommendation reflected that their portion be constructed to asphalt. So when a development occurs later, we're not looking at asphalt, dirt road, and then asphalt or concrete after that. We didn't want there to be a missing blank in this puzzle piece through development. Uzell is on the city's major thoroughfare plan as an 80-foot right-of-way. That thoroughfare also exists and picks up with the county. So there was a discussion that was made during public comment about the right-of-way width. There wasn't a variance ask to not granting that right-of-way width, but I just wanted you to be aware of that this is not just on the city's thoroughfare plan, it's also on the county's thoroughfare plan that this picks up, and it goes into Alvin's jurisdiction. So with that, as I said, we recommend approval with a development agreement with those 3 conditions.
All right, any discussion? Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jessica. Congratulations on the pregnancy. Is it a boy or a girl? Oh, is it your first? Congratulations. So, Jessica, I'm a little confused about the data sheet and the development agreement compared to the application. The application states that they're wanting to forego the requirement to build a perimeter road according to section 62-4629F. But the first condition in staff's data sheet is that they still have to build the perimeter road, but they have to build it as asphalt, not concrete. So are they, and maybe the property owners can clarify, what is your ask? Are you fine with that condition, or is your ask to not build the road altogether? Okay, so I'll touch on that in a minute. Since they're being asked to build half, the city owns the property to the other side of them. Alvin owns the property across the street from them. Is the city committing to building the other half of the street as asphalt at the same time that they build it, or is it just going to be a half street of asphalt until forevermore in the future when Alvin decides to do something in their ETJ there?
We don't have any current plans to extend Uzzle. We don't have any other development that's occurring on Uzzle that would promote this. At some time, since we are the owner of the other side of that street, or Alvin is, yep, the city would have to pick up the tab for the other half of it, unless somebody, because Alvin's regulations aren't going to require that gets constructed. Our subdivision ordinance regulates that through development, and sometimes, in our office, there's developer and there's developer. And it doesn't matter, the way our ordinance is talking about things. It doesn't matter if you're coming in and developing a 1,000 lot subdivision or if you're one piece. And if you remember, council, went through the subdivision ordinance and we said, if you're over 1 acre and you've got a hard surface in front of your property, we're not gonna bother you. Go and build your house. But now we have a piece of property that's under 1 acre and doesn't have a hard surface in front of that lot. So that's why it's here before you. So council recognized way on that if you're checking all the boxes, we don't want to bother you. But if you're not checking off the boxes, we need to look at it and need to make a decision that's best for our community.
Do we have a cost for what their burden would be to build however long the length is, whatever the cost is currently going for asphalt, considering that inflation's grown by 8% year over year? Kind of putting you guys on the spot, I apologize about that, but I'm just, because I struggle with them stating tonight that this is the first that they're learning about the requirement specifically being to build asphalt. They requested in their application to be dissolved of building the road altogether. We, a few months ago, took a vote on one of the Del Bello roads, there's a few of them, so I can't remember which one, to waive this requirement for that specific property as well. So I'm just trying to put all the pieces together here.
Mayor.
I believe in that instance, there was an escrow requirement for that. At the time, it would get constructed. Council had done it through a development agreement of an escrow cost. So that option too is before you if you'd like to throw out an escrow cost, but I don't see how you get around the cost, whether if you construct it or you escrow the funds. I know that since I've been working with the city here now for 3 years, the city council hasn't granted a variance just outright no to not having to build a road. Either you're going to put the money forward or you're just going to construct half of it. And sometimes you don't want someone to do half of a road because you're right, that doesn't make sense. But yes, that is an option before. And I need to pull up the survey for this, but I think our estimated cost for one half of asphalt is up to $75 a linear foot, I think is the estimated cost that we have.
Okay, and what's the total linear footage?
I was trying to look that up while we were talking.
Well, if we could just get that number at some point here, that'd be appreciated. Thank you, Mayor.
Jason.
So I think that's an exercise in futility, getting that number. I think Jessica's right. We have always done that. We've done escrow in these, but I think we're also in a unique position here that we are the developer neighbors on the other side of this. And, okay, so correct us, go ahead. If I'm wrong, then correct me now.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I don't think the city owns any property over there.
Is that not where ours is? Because if
No,
it's
it's further north. It's up at the intersection of South Masters and Uzzle. This is at the far southern end of that street.
I'm looking at the GIS map right here for 9820 Uzzle, and it says
Says
City of Manvel.
Manvel right next
Yeah.
door.
That's city limits.
Oh, is that what it is?
Oh, okay.
All right, then my point's made.
Our property that we just
Okay.
purchased is way up north where Uzzle and South Masters meet.
Okay, I misinterpreted it.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Never mind. Sorry. I thought I had a good
You're
argument.
right.
I don't.
Ultimately, if we did own that, then you're right, we would be responsible for that, but that's city limits.
All right. Okay, any other discussion?
I have a question or
Yes.
I believe a clarification. So if the application does not have on there the option to escrow, do we have to table it and send it back to the table? Or do we have to say yes or no to what it says right now?
I'm sorry, Jessica, I was jumping in, but you could change the conditions in your motion.
We could change the conditions?
You'd approve it with the conditions that staff recommended, or approve it with the conditions that staff recommended, revised as per whatever you want to.
Because my concern, as Jessica brought up, is that, yes, I mean, Jason is absolutely right, and I just want to be consistent with the escrow, except for it's a dirt road. There's nothing in the front. And that's rare that I've ever seen that. Normally, there is some sort of road there that we just kind of, but this is dirt. Cuts off, okay. Okay. So you're only talking about just in front of your house, that little section? Okay. 170 feet? Okay. 170.
I'd like to take another stab at this.
How much is it?
That would be a Jessica question. I would also say that that 75-foot, I apologize, I'm talking to out there. You're fine. Do that? I apologize. I'm not supposed to yell at you. Please don't take it that way. I would look at this to see if it's going off of the 75 or 80, number one. Number two, you said 175, and the $75 is us because of our resources. I would like to think that it'd be different for you guys because you guys would have different resources on how to do it. Because sometimes, and we've done this before, we take a different material because it's in front of your house. Sometimes we do that. I wouldn't say we're going to do that now. That might be better for you to do. We have done that before as well because when people have private roads, sometimes we're just asking for material that a emergency service person can come down if you needed it. So. just, and this will be my last back and forth, I promise, because I'm not supposed to do this, but she's saying it's okay. Our only issue that we will have for the future, and we face this all the time, you are not going to be the last people there, and we have no idea what's coming on around you. And so the decision for us is very difficult, one way or the other, because we have to consider everyone around you and the city, whether they care or not. That's the only thing we have to consider is in that area, making sure that we're considering the whole thing. So that's the only reason why it gets tough for us. So thank you for your patience on that.
Dan?
Mayor, I can confirm that the last development agreement that we did, Jessica's right, it was $150 for the full width for asphalt, so one half of it, $75. So at 170 linear feet, that's $12,750.
That was prices through the roof.
But we verified it again, it was in the summer, so I mean, it's somewhere in that
All right,
neighborhood.
but can I?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to take another stab at this.
Okay.
So I believe that those prices are probably higher today than they were in the summer. I also now reorienting to the map, and I'm pointing at Councilman Davis because that's where the picture was that I last saw. But after reorienting myself to the map, we don't control the other half of the other half of that. That's the city of Alvin. So we don't know what our zoning requirements of that road aren't going to be held to the opposite side of where we're asking these folks to build half the road. This may be one of those opportunities that we don't typically say that we will forgive you for doing the road, that maybe we should, given the hard economic times of what we're looking at right now, given that we, A, don't control the other side of the street, and B, it is going to be really expensive, and C, maybe this is an opportunity for us to go to the county and say, look, we control this half of the road, Alvin controls the other half of the road, maybe this is where the county can step in and help us with the road rather than us burden, and maybe it's just luck or good or bad of the timing, then burden this family from having to do this. I mean, today is an extraordinarily bad time for construction costs. And if this were straight dab in the middle of the city, it might be a little bit more clear cut. But from where I'm sitting, there's too many factors that we don't control in that area that I think we should be looking for a different alternative today. So I would recommend that we take that stipulation off and for 1,000 feet, and let's see if we can find another way to get the road done.
Kyle?
Just a note of caution, I guess. The council, obviously, you can do whatever you want with the development agreement. If you permit a house to be built past where a road is constructed, you will, at some point, pay for that road. You will pay for that road. The city will pay for that road. It's not going to be anybody else. We have the same issue that we're going over right now on DeBella Lane of a distance of anywhere from 2,800 feet or less, depending on the people that live out there. And the city is going to build that road because we allowed houses to be built past where the road is constructed. So I just wanted to point that fact out. You can do what you want, but we're going to pay for that road if somebody else doesn't.
Thank you, Mayor. Kyle, one point of clarification was something that Councilman Albert said. The city technically owns that road. We just don't own any of the property on the other side of the road. So we could still, if we wanted to, go in and we could still, the city, construct the other half if we wanted to, because it's inside our city limits and it's a public right-of-way. It just, there wouldn't be the situation that would arise where the property owner on the other side of the street might want to build, and then they would have to contribute their half. Is that correct?
There's a couple of thoughts. One, depends on how it was dedicated, because it sounds like it's a road easement, because that's what King's Drive and King's Terrace was. When that area was developed, if you remember, the city council actually gave a variance to the entire subdivision down there because most of those were exactly 1 acre, and that went to the middle of the road or the access easement at the time. If the city required those houses to plat, because again, none of those were platted. The developer went in, cut it up, went down to the county and recorded it, didn't go through the city subdivision requirements. What is King's Drive is actually a road easement. So I don't know if it was a dedicated road right-of-way. My guess is because there was a dedication requirement from the middle of the road, it was probably a road easement as well and not a dedicated road right-of-way. That's the first thought. The second thing is the east side or the north side, and again, it's perspective, is the C12 ditch. It's not going to be developed. It's what it is. It's the C12 ditch. It's, I don't know, 25 feet across and 10 feet deep. So the question of the additional dedication to the right-of-way, when the thoroughfare actually gets constructed at some point in the future, it's going to have to be a question of how much actual road right-of-way is available, because the ditch is on the other side of that. Unless, of course, the drainage district or the city went back in and put in huge box culverts all the way from South Masters all the way south of at least Kings Drive. That would be the only way that you'd, if there was additional right-of-way that would have to come from the other side, that's the only other way that you'd be able to get that. So it's a question of how it was dedicated, whether it was actually road right-of-way or a road easement of some sort, and then construction of it at 80 feet or 75 feet would depend on the other side and that very large ditch.
Appreciate that clarification. Mayor, with some of what Councilmember Albert said, I'd be in support of removing the first condition as well, which is their requirement there. But I wouldn't be opposed to even tabling this tonight. I know that there's a situation with them in the pregnancy as well, but it seems as though they found out about some of these requirements last minute, and I wouldn't be opposed to affording staff the opportunity and the property owners the opportunity to sit down and talk about it, whether it be over the phone or in person, to see if they can come to some sort of agreement first and then come back to city council. But if taking a vote on this tonight, I would prefer us to see that we take out condition 1. Thank you, Mayor.
Point of clarification, what do you want us to go back and speak to the applicants about? What direction are you giving to us? We've presented an option to you, and you've not given us direction on how to talk with them.
Well, considering, and if they don't have the money to pay for it, maybe we have that, maybe we just take a vote on it tonight. But I'm putting myself in the property owner's shoes. And if I found out about this last minute, according to what they stated tonight, I would personally want an opportunity to meet with staff, to look at the options, and to see if there could be a mutual agreement between staff and the property owners to then come back to council. Because it seems like there was a disconnect from the facts that we've been presented with tonight. In the past, when there's been a disconnect, we've afforded the opportunity for there to be a connection made. But if based off of the facts from tonight and them not having the money, the additional basically roughly $13,000, maybe $14,000 to do this, then we could take a vote according to that. But out of courtesy for the property owner and staff, I did want to bring that forward because we have done that in the past.
So one more time, for clarification, council can remove number 1 and say just nothing is constructed. Option number 2, escrow the funds. Option number 3, asphalt their portion of the road. So we want to have that conversation with them about escrowing on terms, or
I'm presenting the opportunity that if there's a desire amongst this body to give direction for additional conversation with staff, then this council can speak up and contribute to that and say if you might want to see something specific there, or we could make a motion one way or another. I just wanted to present the avenue to have that conversation to see if there's a willingness to give staff direction to enter back into negotiations with the property owners before we just take a vote tonight, flying by the seat of our pants.
All right. Anybody else? Well. Well, I don't think that I'm being asked to ask you, do you want us to vote tonight, or do you want us to table it so that you can go back and meet with staff and quite possibly come to
I'll make a motion to approve as recommended, striking number 1.
I'll second that motion, Mayor.
All right. Striking number 1, would you,
The rest is the rest stays the same, so condition 2 and 3 remain, but strike condition 1,
which is the road?
which is the road.
Okay. Is there a problem? Striking 1 would be striking the road condition. All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Good luck to you. All right. We have one more item. Consideration and possible action to direct staff on creating a financial impact summary on any agenda item that has a direct or indirect impact on the budget. Requested by Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. To start off, I don't think this needs to be something that's super rigorous or super extensive, but I do see it as being something that's similar to what we've done with the grant policy in the past. Councilmember Albert actually brought something to my attention in Civic Clerk. Amongst other features that we have available, we do have the feature as well that there is an opportunity to enter in a financial impact summary on any given agenda item. And at our last meeting, we had an item that came up, and I'm glad with the decision that we made. We invested in our employees, but there were some questions that were asked. For example, if we have all of our police officers that go through a 4-year cycle in the new development pay program, what type of yearly budget hit is that going to be moving forward? We didn't have those numbers available to us at the time. Additionally, what's the projected growth of our employees over the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever that might be? Because then we're going to have to start setting aside $60 per month per employee every single year. Well, that impacts our budget. That impacts things that we might be able to do on parks in the future or other areas, because now we're dedicating that money to what we just approved. I just think with all of the big financial decisions that we have coming up, I see there being a benefit to partnering and working with staff to find a way in agenda items that come forward that impact the budget, involve finances, to give us a summary as to how it might impact not only the immediate budget, but how it would impact the budget moving forward. We have to project out. We have to be forward-thinking in this area. Jessica does this a lot with data sheets, kind of gives us a really good summary of what's going on and staff's perspective on what's going on. I see this being something similar to that. Private businesses do it a lot. I think public sector could start to do it a little bit more. For example, tax rates. If we adopt a tax rate below the max, what does that actually do to the budget? And what is that going to do to us moving forward? So as council, when we communicate with the public, we can have all the facts available to us. So I wanted to just bring this forward, see if there was an openness to working with staff in the future on putting together a policy of what this might look like. So that way we can create an environment where we have a better understanding of not just the financial impacts here and now, but also the future. So, Mayor, in the past, you've asked that if there's items that we might want to work on like this, bring it forward, see if there's a consensus amongst this body, and then if there is, can continue working on it behind the scenes. But I definitely don't want to waste anybody's time, council's time, or staff's time, if there's not a majority that would like to see something like this take form and take shape for the future. So I would love to hear from council, and then we can also take a vote at the end of this item to see where everybody stands. Thank you, Mayor.
Any discussion?
I think it was a good idea, but I think it's too narrow. I think it's probably time that we look at our procedures overall and see whether there are any tweaks there, like our standard reports and things. I don't think we've looked at that since you and I first were elected to council. So maybe this is something we look at there too. See if there's anything else we need to tweak at the same time. But the functionality exists in Civic Plus to do it. I mean, it's something I see other cities doing. You look at their council packets, and there's a whole cover sheet that says this is what it is, this is what we're recommending, this is why we're recommending it, and here's the impact to the budget or whatever. I mean, it's not foreign, it's not a bad idea, but I think maybe there's a bigger scope here.
we have anything, Chris? Do we have anything from Chris or Kyle?
You can start, but as he's walking up, I guess. I think in the budget itself, we have information about capital projects. And that's going to be probably the biggest place where an impact is going to be. One of the things that I was thinking about when I was looking up, kind of looking into your suggestion or the idea about the next level primary care. In order to sort of flesh out what that cost would be, is the city going to continue it next year? And I don't know that. Is the staff going to use it? Hopefully. I think it's a good project. Is next level going to go up? I don't know that. How many new employees are you going to approve in next year's budget? I don't know that. So I'm not certain exactly how I'm going to tell you something other than what the cost is right now for what that project is. So that's using the sort of the example that you had given, Councilmember Davis. There are many things that we won't even know what those costs are going to be. Like I said, included in the budget, there are estimates for operation and maintenance of capital projects, but for specific ones, there may not be a way of telling you what it is 2 or 3 years from now.
That was going to be my main focus. I have no problems whatsoever telling you what this is going to do to this year's budget. But as you've all seen, there are budget amendments every year when we do this. And I don't come before you and claim that I have a crystal ball. I don't claim to know what's going to happen, especially as fast as we're growing. And if you ask me to consider what this is going to do to us 3 years out, unless it's a capital project and we kind of have a large scope of it, I'm basically just throwing darts. And some of the information that you included in the packet here, it's nice, but they're basically just guessing. They don't know what's going to happen 5 years out. And if they did, they're not running a $1 trillion deficit at this point in time. I don't think as a cost-benefit analysis, it would be worth anyone in the finance department's time to try to project what's going to happen in 3 years, because 50-50 shot, I'm right. I have a high self-esteem. I think I do a good job here, but I'm going to be the first one to admit to you, 3 years out from now, I can't tell you what this project is going to cost us. That's why we do budgets on a year-to-year basis. Next year, we may decide we don't like the project. Next year, we may decide we're not getting enough money from the state. We're not getting enough money from our taxes. We can't support this project anymore. Just like next year, we may get a legislative impact that says, hey, you're not getting property taxes ever again. Well, we're going to have to cut employees and we're going to have to cut projects, and all that guesswork that I did about how things would go if we were in a utopian society and we were getting all the money we were supposed to just went down the drain. So I like the idea. I wish we worked more in a robotics kind of factory institution where I could pinpoint every little thing from here to 3 years out. But the way we operate, the way we do things, and the way Bobby makes us, not have contracts for more than 1 year, it's kind of hard to say 3 years down the road, this is going to cost us this much.
Thank you, Mayor. So, and Chris, I can understand that perspective. The police chief was able to do something for us that was the first time that I'd seen it happen since I've been on city council, which he was able to project out over the next 5 years. Hypotheticals, there's a lot of variables, a lot of uncertainty, but to say if we continue growing in population, what is he gonna need from a police officer? What is he gonna need from a department standpoint? 3 years ago, the city determined that we are going to need 160 acres because we're gonna need to grow from a facility standpoint. This is where I think government needs to operate more like business, because working in the private sector, when we make financial decisions, if that financial decision does not pan out over the long term, that immediately costs people their jobs. Government's not held to those same financial constraints, because guess what? We can just raise taxes. We can just collect even the status quo of taxes, and it helps us make up whatever that financial risk is that we took. So because there's a steady stream, potential steady stream of revenue, the risk that is associated with financially related decisions is mitigated. But I think to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, which is what we all do here, we need to understand a little bit more. It's not going to be perfect. It's not a perfect science by any means. So many things can change. But if we don't know how things are going to impact us from a tax rate standpoint. You know, we have a new wastewater, and water treatment plant that's coming up. What are we going to need from a staffing standpoint for that? I'm sure you guys could give us that number, what's needed, but how are we preparing for that in the budget? You know, we know that there's different developments that are coming online, and that's going to take maintenance. That's going to take utility workers. What does that do to the budget? I'm speaking more so in a budget scenario, but I think we just need to start racking our brains around how can we, within the limitations that we do have, how can we forecast this out? What can we start doing? What can we start putting in place? And as Councilmember Albert said, it's not a foreign science. It's not something that's foreign. Other cities do this. Other cities can approach this. And I think that there's an opportunity here where we can, as a city on the rise, we can be a leader in this area, and we can put our heads together and we can come up with some innovative ways to do this, similar to what we're doing with the street maintenance plan. The county doesn't even do what we're looking to do with our street maintenance plan. I think that's incredible. I think that's top notch. I think we're gonna just blow some socks off with that. And I think with you, Chris, and with the finance team and the people that we have here on council, we can do something incredible here. It's gonna take a little bit of work. It's not something overnight that's gonna happen. And I just think that there's such an opportunity. I wanna see us continue that conversation, continue working it. Maybe we have a workshop in the future at some point, Q1 of next year, to talk through this a little bit more and just explore what the options are. But you're right, state could change things. So many things could happen. A hurricane could come through and, you know, hit Manvel again, and that just completely rearranges everything that we're doing. But I just think that there's an opportunity. I don't want to see us miss that and then be kicking ourselves down the road because we didn't understand how the financial decisions we make today impact what we do tomorrow, especially with some big ticket items. I mean, Lorraine and Mayor, you guys have been advocates of parks. What's that going to cost from a maintenance standpoint? What's that going to cost from an operations standpoint? We're going to have Parks and Recs specific maintenance workers for that. What's that going to cost? We need to understand what those are going to be while they might change because they impact our decisions today. Thank you, Mayor.
I would make the argument that cities very rarely are supposed to operate like businesses. If so, we're going through, there's a couple of things that come to mind. We're going through an IT master plan right now with the possibility of the city using ARPA funds to pay for the extension of broadband, perhaps in the areas south of 6, perhaps over here sort of east of 1128 or east of McCoy towards Cemetery or Pine. When Comcast came in, I remember specifically Adrian Gaspar asking the representative from Comcast, when are you going to take and run that high-speed fiber down South Masters, down Jordan to Cook to my house? And the gentleman responded, we're never going to. It will never make money. The fiber will disintegrate before we get the cost paid back. If the city was going to operate like a business, you would not have just waived off $14,000 that you have now burdened the city with paying for an asphalt road. So in certain instances, the city has extended water and sewer lines with no customers. That's not what a business would do. If a business was doing that, they'd make very certain that there were customers at the end of that line, or they wouldn't do it in the first place. So the city is actually doing things that aren't, may not be in the financial interest, but might be in the interest of the whole. Extending water and sewer lines so that you get a loop system is an added protection or a benefit to a subdivision. That's what the benefit is. And you're not going to be doing that because it's going to make the city any money. So I understand, and like I said, the parks, the operation and maintenance, those are capital projects. And you're exactly right. It's going to cost a lot of money for a Parks and Rec department to be created from nothing in order to do all the things that the city is going to need that group of people in order to do. But those are sort of the capital project costs that you can work to sort of project out. When you go in and you put in a park at the soon-to-be renamed park on next to the police department, when you put in restrooms or a parking lot or trails or all those other facilities, you're going to have an idea of what those capital costs are going to be and some expectation of the cost for the operation and maintenance of it. Those are big capital projects, and because of that, those are things that you probably can do some forecasting for. You know, you're going to know that you're going to need to mow it, and you're going to need to maintain that equipment. It's going to be relatively small at the beginning, but ultimately there's going to be a cost associated with replacing it.
To follow Kyle's point, Jason Councilman Albert just suggested that Civic Plus has this option to come up with these summaries. Is it just like a module that we have in this thing right here that gives us our, is it civil clerk?
Civic clerk.
Civic clerk? Does it have a module? I'm just curious.
It's not a module, it's just extra fields.
Yeah,
Extra fields?
it doesn't determine it. It just shows you
It's
where
just a place to put
the
it.
staff would figure it
It'd
out.
be,
and they
it would
put
be
it in.
data entry for them to put that in there for it to spit out something.
No, it doesn't calculate anything.
Doesn't calculate either?
No, it's just it's a form, yeah, it's just a form that the staff would determine it and add it to it.
Yeah,
You know, it could be a Word or an Excel spreadsheet for,
yeah, and so that's, and now that I'm understanding what it is that Davis was asking, because I looked at this and I kind of wanted to see how this was going, and then Councilman Albert brought up all the other things that we have already. We get our weekly updates, we get our summaries, we have department heads give us what they're doing in their department, and every year from April all the way down to October, we discuss and we ask and we throw in more and more information. They build on what they think we're gonna ask, and then we throw more things at them that we might want to do. These seats change every 3 years. All of that being said, and then adding staff to give them more work to do, to wonder if we're paying them enough. I think that what Albert is suggesting is a lot more feasible, as why don't we see the information we're given now to see if it's worthy of getting more, because I feel like our decisions are sound with the information that we are given and what we ask for individually, to just kind of assess that, to see if that fills that need already. Because I can go back 3 years, I can go back 6 at least. And what did I do? I actually handed my notes over to Nicole to say, hey, this is what we were thinking. Take it as you want. It was just doodles. Passing it on to somebody else who might need to be there 2 or 3 years from now. So I think, like you said, it might be narrow, and or this might be too broad, because I definitely don't want to burden with anything, unless it's a button that we push, that they say, it's already in, we'll just print this button and it'll give us something else to read. I think that what you're asking is almost hard to spit out very easily. Other than us individually asking, what do you need, what are you asking for? Because like with parks, you gave a great example. Why do you think we haven't put $20 million in parks? Because we all know, who have been sitting here, how expensive it is to do that. And we have considered the cost analysis, and we know that it's not gonna bring any money, it's just gonna bring community. That's why we haven't paid for it. We've just done as little as we can, as much as we have, and built as much as we can, because we all understand that absolute analysis and what we're asking to do and what the taxpayer is gonna do. So that's my point. I would rather see what we have. Are we given enough information to all make the decisions that we all make? And I guess individually, we have to say to ourselves, is it enough information for us as individuals to make those decisions? Because we're 7 people here. Just a thought.
I think the key thing that you said, Lorraine, is that, and it's not just building community. We're building community. And that is not a money-making prospect. We are here as a city to build community and to take care of our citizens. And it doesn't allow us the luxury of making money to put in our coffers. So I see the incredible difference between private business and private accounting and city accounting are 2 very, very different kinds of accounting. So I don't have any interest in going any further with this, but I'll go with the council in what and what the council would like to do. Do you want to take a vote?
I mean, for point of clarification, I do not oppose burdening staff to give us information that we all get universally. However, I'm going to agree with Dan and I'm going to agree with Chris that some of the things in the example that's in our packet would be difficult to be able to go out and price out 3 or 4 years. But an item that comes to us like the next level thing that says, hey, this year it's going to cost us X dollars. We budgeted for it. This is the line it's going to come out of. We're not going to mess anything else up. That might be something I want to know. Now, if what Chris just said was true, that Bobby keeps the city to 1-year contracts, then, you know, one of the forms I have to fill out when I sign a new contract with a vendor is this is what it costs this year, this is what the second year, and I have to anticipate what my growth is going to be or whatever. And then the auditor's office signs off on, okay, yeah, the money is budgeted this year, and now you know, Chris, that next year and a half or whatever, that by signing this, you're going to need to make sure that's in the budget. You know, those are things that you can do. But I'm going to go back to what I said at the start of the discussion is I think this is a great idea, but I think it's part of a bigger discussion. So I don't know that we should decide it tonight. I think we should say, thank you, Mr. Davis, for bringing this to our attention. And let's look at the bigger picture of how to standardize the reports that we get and standardize the agenda items and what information that we get so that we're all getting the same information, not bits and pieces of you know, my conversation with Kyle and your conversation with Chris and everything, that we're all getting the exact same information.
Yes, Larry.
I think we should move this to another night, not at 10 minutes to 10. We've been through a lot tonight. It's hard to even think about anymore, so.
Okay. All right. Are we okay with that?
No action, we good?
I would say as long as there's just an openness to continuing the conversation at a later date, maybe we could look to do it at the beginning of next year, put it on a workshop and just continue talking through it some and taking Jason's approach, taking a little bit more of a broad sweep and just see where we can make some tweaks and improvements. So I'm open with that.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And before I call for council comments and a motion to adjourn, I want to, if necessary, I want to extend an apology to Councilmember Davis. I did not mean to imply that you would break the law. So my apologies.
Thank you, Mayor.
I
was going to go home and cry and eat a gallon of ice.
No, seriously, that's a big accusation, and I was not accusing you, or if it came out that way, then I misspoke. What I was trying to clarify is that there is a large chance that it would be taken to court. It would be taken to suit, because it does have kind of a commonplace term that's associated with it. But not only would I not say that to you, I would never even broach thinking that about you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that.
So I want to make that a public statement. Do we have any comments or activities? Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Real quick. So we actually have some employees who are celebrating their birthdays this month as well as their work anniversaries. So Robbie Hall, Scott Guajardo, Tanner Truitt, and Ray Word are celebrating their work anniversaries with the city in November. So just want to say thank you for their hard work over these years. Also, Osmond Valdez, Michelle Vela, and Christy Houston are celebrating their birthdays this month. So happy birthday to them. Our football team has reached the second round of the playoffs. So they play, I believe it's this upcoming Friday. And then also our volleyball team is now one of the top 4 teams in the state. And so they've made the state tournament. So they play in basically the semifinals. And then if they win that, they will be playing in the finals for state. So if you can, make sure to cheer them on and give them your support. Thank you, Mayor.
The volleyball team takes off at approximately 1 o'clock tomorrow, and I've been asked to go and bid them adieu and good luck, and so I will be there. I'm sorry? Wednesday. That's right. It's Monday. Is it still Monday? Okay. So, Wednesday, been asked to send them off, and I'm excited to be able to do that. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'd like to remind everybody that Thanksgiving is upon us and that this year has been particularly hard financially for a lot of families. So while we give thanks to our own families, see what we can do to help others in our community who may not have been as fortunate so that they can participate this year too.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn, Mayor.
Have a second? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? You're not leaving your seats yet, are you? Okay. Good night.